She had exactly $11 in her bank account. Her electricity was 3 days away from being shut off. Her refrigerator had half a carton of eggs and a bottle of ketchup. She had not sold a single painting in 4 months. And that night, she was sitting on the floor of her little studio, back against the cold wall, brush in her hand, seriously asking herself one question. What is the point? She was 32 years old. She had given everything to her art. Every late night, every skipped meal, every part-time job she took just to stay alive long enough to keep painting. And for what? For paintings that hung on walls for a few weeks, and then came back home with her, unsold, unloved, like she was collecting her own rejections. She was this close to quitting, this close to packing up every canvas, stacking them in a corner, and never picking up a brush again. But she did not quit that night. And 3 weeks later, a man walked into a gallery, stood in front of her work, and did something that changed her life in a single evening. He did not compliment her. He did not leave his card. He did not ask to meet her. He bought everything, every single painting on every single wall. He paid without negotiating. He left without introducing himself. And nobody in that room knew why. But he came back. And what happened next is the kind of story that makes you believe, truly believe, that the right person will find you, even in your darkest, quietest, most invisible moment, even when you have stopped believing you are worth finding. Stay with me, because this story gets deeper and more surprising with every chapter, and I promise you, the ending is not what you are expecting. Before we go any further, if you are new here, welcome. Please subscribe to this channel right now. We tell real, deeply human stories here. Stories that stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and become part of this family. And I want to hear from you today. Drop a comment below right now and tell me, where in the world are you watching this from? Now let us get into the story. Her name was Clara Malone. Brown eyes that always looked slightly far away, like she was seeing something the rest of the room could not. Quiet voice. Paint-stained hands, always. Even on her days off, there was always a little color somewhere under her fingernails. She grew up in a small house with her mother, a woman named June, who believed in Clara the way very few people ever believe in anyone. June kept every drawing Clara made from the age of 5. She framed the best ones and hung them in the hallway. She used to say, "One day, Clara, strangers are going to stand in front of your work and feel things they cannot explain." June passed away when Clara was 24. Breast cancer. Quick and cruel and completely unfair. Clara did not paint for almost a year after that. She could not. She would sit in front of a blank canvas and feel nothing but the weight of silence. Then one night, something shifted. She picked up a brush, and what came out of her that night was not pretty. It was not the cheerful watercolors she used to make. It was something raw and aching and deeply, painfully real. A woman standing alone at a rain-covered window, back turned to the viewer, her reflection barely visible in the glass. Just standing there, remembering something. Clara cried while she painted it. She finished it at 4 in the morning. She stepped back and looked at it and thought, that is the truest thing I have ever made. That painting would, years later, change everything. But first came 8 years of silence. 8 years of trying. 8 years of submitting her work to galleries and getting polite rejections. 8 years of shows that came and went with 1 or 2 sales or none. 8 years of coffee shop shifts and bookstore weekends and painting at midnight when her body wanted to sleep, but her mind would not let her stop. She kept a small notebook where she tracked her money. The numbers were always frightening. Some months she chose between groceries and paint. She always chose paint. She told herself she would eat less, but she would not create less. People who saw her work always said the same thing. They would stand in front of one of her paintings and go quiet. Then they would say something like, "This makes me feel something. I don't know what, but something deep." And then they would walk away without buying it. Feeling something and paying for something are very different decisions. Her only real friend during those years was a woman named 60 years old, big laugh, no patience for nonsense, who ran a framing shop nearby and had been framing Clara's paintings for years, often at no charge or whatever Clara could afford. One evening, that sat at Clara's kitchen table, looked at the near-empty refrigerator, looked at the stack of unsold canvases against the wall, and looked at Clara. "I love you," said. "So I am going to say this because nobody else will. You cannot keep living like this. Your talent is real. Your work is real. But something has to change, because right now you are slowly disappearing, and the world does not even know what it is losing." Clara wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "What do I do?" Dot leaned forward. "There's a new gallery opening downtown. Very fancy, very wealthy crowd. I know the manager. Her name is Patricia. I can get you one show, one evening, one real chance in front of the right people." Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "And if it goes nowhere again?" Dot looked at her steadily. "Then at least you will know you tried in the right room." "But Clara, I do not think it will go nowhere. I think when the right eyes see your work, something is going to happen. I feel it." Clara trusted Dot. She always had. She said yes. The show was on a Friday evening in late October. Clara chose 12 paintings. Every single one was deeply personal. Every one felt like opening a door to a room she usually kept locked. The gallery was called the Ivory Room. White walls, tall ceilings, soft warm lighting, the kind of place where everything, including the air, seemed expensive. Clara arrived in a black dress she had owned for years and stood near the back, trying to look calm, failing completely. Dot stood beside her. "You belong here," she said quietly. Clara did not feel like she belonged anywhere that evening, but she stood tall and watched as people drifted in. They looked. They tilted their heads. They whispered to each other. They sipped wine. They smiled at Clara politely when they caught her eye. Nobody reached for their wallet. An hour passed. Clara was starting to feel that familiar, heavy feeling, the one that lived in her chest and whispered that she was fooling herself, that she should go home, that she was not meant for this world of galleries and wealthy collectors and red dot sales. And then the door opened one more time. He did not rush in. He did not make a loud entrance. He simply walked through the door, and somehow the whole room seemed to notice, without looking up. He was tall, with the kind of posture that comes from decades of quiet authority. Dark hair gone gray at the temples. A dark suit, well-fitted, nothing flashy. He looked to be in his mid-50s. His face was sharp and still, the kind of face that had seen a great deal and learned to show very little. What struck Clara most, from across the room, was how he moved through the space. Everyone else in that gallery glanced at paintings, nodded, moved on. He stopped. He looked at the first painting for a full 2 minutes. Then he moved to the second, then the third. He was not browsing. He was reading. When he reached the painting of the woman at the rain-covered window, he stopped and stood so still that Clara found herself holding her breath. He stayed in front of that canvas for nearly 6 minutes. She counted. He leaned slightly forward at one point, studying a small detail in the lower corner. Then he straightened up, and she saw something pass across his face. Something she did not expect on a man who looked like that. Something that looked a great deal like grief. He turned and walked to the front desk. He spoke to Patricia in a low voice. Clara could not hear the words, but she watched Patricia's expression shift from professional composure to barely concealed shock. Patricia nodded several times. She picked up the small red stickers, the ones used to mark a sold painting, and she began to walk slowly around the room. 1 dot, 2 dots, 3. She went to every single painting, every wall, every canvas, all 12. Clara could not move. She felt that grab her arm. When Patricia walked over to her, she looked like she was trying very hard to stay calm. "Miss Malone," she said quietly, "a gentleman has purchased your complete collection this evening." Clara stared at her. Every painting. Every painting. "Who?" Clara asked. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. Patricia glanced toward the entrance. The man in the dark suit was already gone. The money arrived before 9 the next morning. Clara was sitting at her kitchen table with cold coffee when her phone buzzed. She looked at the number on her screen. She read it twice. Then she put the phone face down on the table and sat very still for a long time, the way you do when your brain simply cannot catch up to what just happened. She called Dot. That came over within 20 minutes. Clara showed her the screen. that sat down heavily in the nearest chair and covered her face with both hands. "Clara," she said, voice muffled. "Clara." "I know," Clara said, but the money was not the most striking thing that arrived that morning. There was also a note. It had been delivered to the gallery and forwarded to Clara, a sealed envelope. Inside, a single handwritten page. The handwriting was firm and very clear, each letter placed with deliberate care. It said, "Your work is the most honest thing I have encountered in 20 years. Every painting says something that most people spend their whole lives avoiding. If you are ever willing to take on a commission, I would be honored to discuss it. No conditions, no deadline, no pressure of any kind, only if it interests you. Signed simply V." A phone number below the initial. Clara looked at that note for 2 full days. That said, "Call immediately." A man who spends that kind of money without negotiating is not playing games. Call him. But something in Clara made her wait. Not fear. More like the instinct you feel when something seems real, but you are not sure yet if you are allowed to trust it. Like standing at the edge of warm water and waiting just one more moment before you step in. On the 3rd day, she called. He answered on the 2nd ring. "Miss Malone," he said. His voice was deep and measured, the voice of a man who never speaks more than he means to. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "and I wanted to ask you something." "Of course." "Why?" she said. Just that one word. A brief pause. Not uncomfortable. Thoughtful. "Because I have spent a very long time in rooms full of impressive, expensive things," he said. "Most of them are designed to show wealth or taste or power. They are meant to say something about the person who owns them. Your paintings are not like that. They are not trying to impress anyone. They are just true, and that is very rare." Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Which painting stopped you the longest?" She already knew the answer. She had watched him, but she wanted to hear him say it. "The woman at the window," he said immediately. "In the rain." "Why that one?" Another pause, and this one fell deeper. "Because she is not watching the rain," he said quietly. "She is somewhere else entirely. She is inside a memory, and you can feel the weight of it even though you cannot see her face. I have not stood in front of a painting like that in a very long time. Maybe ever." Clara felt something move in her chest, something she had not felt about her own work in years. "That painting," she said softly, "is about my mother." A silence settled between them, not awkward, the kind of silence that means both people understand something without needing more words. "I am sorry," he said simply. She would have liked knowing that painting found someone who understood it. Clara said. They agreed to meet. A quiet restaurant, nothing extravagant. He arrived before her and stood when she walked in, a gesture so old-fashioned and genuine that it caught her off guard. His name, she learned that evening, was Victor Casale. She did not yet know what that name meant to half the city. She just saw a man in his 50s with careful eyes and a way of listening that made you feel like everything you said was worth saying. They talked for nearly 4 hours. Clara talked more than she had talked to anyone in years. She told him about her mother, about the 8 years of struggling, about painting at midnight because it was the only time the world felt like it belonged to her, about the notebook where she tracked her money, and how the numbers always frightened her, but she kept painting anyway. Victor listened to every word without interrupting. When she finished, she looked at him across the table and said, "I have told you a great deal about myself. You have told me almost nothing." He met her eyes. "I know," he said. "I will tell you whatever you want to know, but I should warn you that some of it is not easy to hear." "I am not afraid of difficult truths," she said. He considered her for a moment. "No," he said, "I do not think you are. You paint them often enough." He paused. Then he said, "I grew up in a world with very few choices, and made many of them badly. I have lived by rules that most people would find deeply uncomfortable. I have power, and I have money, and I have enemies. And for most of my adult life, I believed that softness was something you could not afford." He looked down briefly, then back up at her. "I used to want to be an architect," he said. "I was quite good at it, actually. I used to love the idea. You could build something that outlasted you, something people would walk through long after you were gone." Clara looked at him. "What happened?" Life, he said simply, and left it there. She learned more about him in pieces over the following weeks. They did some research and came to Clara with wide eyes and a long list of things she had found. The name Casale was well known in certain parts of the city. Victor had inherited a particular kind of business from his father and had run it for 30 years. He was respected by some, feared by many, trusted by very few. One evening Clara looked at him directly and said, "I know who you are, or at least, I know what people say about you." "And," he said, "I want to hear it from you." She said, "I want the honest version." He did not look away. He did not make excuses. He told her, plainly and without softening it, the outline of the life he had lived, the choices, the consequences, the things he had done and the things he had ordered, and the world he had operated inside for decades. When he finished, the table was quiet. "Why tell me all that?" she said. "You could have said much less." "Because you asked for the honest version," he said, "and you deserve it. You paint honestly. You live honestly. The least I can do is speak honestly." Clara sat with that for a long moment. Then she said, "Why me, Victor? Truly, not the beautiful answer about honest paintings. The real answer." He looked at her for a long time before he spoke. "Because every person in my life wants something from me," he said. "Money, protection, favor. Even the ones who say they care about me. They care about what I represent, what I can do. And I have accepted that for a long time because I thought it was all I was capable of attracting." He paused, and then I walked into a room and saw paintings made by someone who had nothing and was fighting to keep going and was still putting the most honest parts of herself on walls for strangers to see. Someone who was not trying to impress anyone or sell anything, just trying to make something true. His voice was very steady and very quiet. "I did not buy those paintings to own them," he said. "I bought them because I needed to know the person who made them was real." Clara started the commission 4 months after their first meeting. It was the largest canvas she had ever worked on. She did not rush it. She let it come slowly, the way the best things always come. She painted 2 people, side by side, not looking at each other, both facing the same horizon, something wide and open ahead of them, not touching, but close enough that the space between them felt warm rather than empty. No faces visible, just 2 figures, 2 silhouettes, the world ahead of them enormous and unknown. When she finally showed it to him, Victor stood in front of it for a very long time, longer than he had stood in front of the woman at the window, longer than she had ever seen him be still. Then he turned to her, and she saw something on his face she had not seen before, something open, something unguarded. The face of a man who had learned very young to show nothing, and who was, in this moment, choosing to show everything. "Clara," he said. His voice was not quite steady. "This is the most extraordinary thing anyone has ever given me." "It is not just a painting," she said. "No," he said. "I know that." They stood together in her small studio, surrounded by the smell of paint and the sound of the evening street below, and something settled quietly between them. Not an ending, a beginning, the kind that does not arrive with noise and fireworks, but with the slow, certain feeling of something falling perfectly into place. Years later, when Clara was finally persuaded to talk publicly about that chapter of her life, she said this: "I was $11 from quitting. I was that close to becoming someone who used to paint, and I think about that sometimes. I think about how many people are right now at that exact edge. Right now, tonight, how many artists and dreamers and quiet, stubborn, talented people are sitting on the floor of a small room asking themselves what the point is." She paused. "I want them to know what I know now. The point is the painting itself. The point is the making. The point is staying honest when the world keeps telling you that honesty does not pay. Because somewhere, and you do not know when, and you cannot plan for it, the right eyes will find your work. The right person will walk through the door." She smiled. "He did not rescue me. I need to be clear about that. I was already fighting. I was already surviving. I had already refused to give up 100 times before that night. He did not save me. He just saw me, clearly and completely, and without any motive except that he needed something real. She looked down for a moment, and sometimes, she said quietly, being truly seen by one person is the thing that makes you believe you are worth seeing at all. That is the story of Clara Malone, the broke, tired, nearly finished artist who hung 12 honest paintings on a wall on a Friday night in October, and the complicated, guarded, quietly broken man who walked in, read every one of them like they were written for him, and paid whatever it took to find out who made them. He bought all her paintings just to meet her. But what he discovered when he did was something he had spent 30 years building walls around. A reason to remember who he was before the walls went up. If this story stayed with you, please share it with someone today. Someone who needs to hear it. Someone who might be sitting on their own floor tonight, asking themselves what the point is. And if you're not yet subscribed, please do that right now. These stories take time and love to tell, and every subscriber means the world. Most importantly, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me where in the world you are watching this from. Your city, your country, wherever you are tonight. You are part of this community, and I want to know you are here. Until next time, do not give up on the thing you love, even in the dark, especially in the dark.